So for a time I was obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with all things in the Indian culture. There wasn't a week that I didn't have henna on my hands or on my feet. I listened to Indian music. I watched the latest Indian movies with my favorite Indian actors. My parents knew about this obsession, so much to the point that if a young man walked by who was from India, my mom would look at me and be like, "Is he cute? Is he cute?" I was convinced I would marry someone from India. And I got the chance to visit India quite a few years ago. I was there with my dad and his colleague. And my one request was to go to the Bollywood theater not far from Delhi that was run by Shah Rukh Khan, the Shah Rukh Khan. So I sat there with my dad, his colleague. This was a bit funny. And I sat there just in awe, fascinated, agog. So I thought maybe this fascination with India is part of God's compelling me towards there. We had friends at the time that were living in India and definitely would have helped me start my missionary journey there. But you know what? I chickened out. The idea was daunting to me. Do things in a foreign country, a foreign culture, foreign language. Do things the way I know how to do them, but obviously wouldn't work in a new environment or culture. And fundraise. The dauntingness of fundraising, which I'm sure many of you know. So I stopped pursuing it. I refused the calling that may have been from God, and my fascination also slowly faded. Though, I must say, a good Indian buffet is still my go-to for any meal. So that was the end of my college days, and maybe I was disappointed with myself or frustrated, or maybe I started to doubt that missions was something I could do. So missions kind of fell to the back burner. Yet I always knew in the back of my mind something burning inside me, telling me that I had to go. A few years after university, I convinced myself that I just need to travel. That'll get this missionary bug out of me. And Jonah again, right? God, I know you called me to this, but maybe I'll just do it this way. Maybe I'll travel. So I thought, okay, my whole life I've worked with Christians. I went to a Christian school, Christian university, always surrounded by Christians. So, okay, God, you can give me a job where I will travel and get paid, obviously, and I'll work with non-Christians and I'll live out my faith that way. And to my dad's ultimate delight, I got a job working with the PGA. So I got to travel the tour, work the tournaments, and I got paid to do it. I thought maybe this will satiate the call within me. I thought that I could become a PGA missionary. All of the pros and the caddies on tour brought to Christ through me. This was my dream job, right? What more could I want? What more could I want? So at my church back in California, and I'm sure many of you also do, we say that God can do immeasurably more than we could ever hope for or imagine. And I've always known that, right? We know this, but this was a time in my life where I really saw how real it was. After 3 months of working with the PGA, I found myself in Taiwan with about 3 months of holiday. I thought, okay, instead of going back to the States, let's do some traveling. At the time, I had never been to Central Asia, so I thought, okay, I'll go to Kazakhstan. Now, at the time, I knew nothing about Kazakhstan. I barely even knew where it was. And don't lie, probably most of you also don't know much about Kazakhstan. And when you hear Kazakhstan, you hear stan. You think Afghanistan, Pakistan. And in Kazakhstan, we joke that that's about what most people think of Kazakhstan. I even thought that Kazakhs, the people in Kazakhstan, were Middle Eastern. Totally wrong. They're Asian, by the way. But I thought theirs was going to be brown and dry, but I was so wrong. And after 1 month in Kazakhstan, I had fallen in love with the country. There was nothing more I wanted in life than to be there. There's a Kazakh poet who says something along the lines of, the Kazakh steppe, the land runs in his blood. And that's exactly how I feel. My point is to say that though I knew I had a calling to live abroad and live out my faith, I asked God to let me do it my way. And He did. He gave me that job with the PGA. He used that job. He used me trying to do it my way. He gave me what I thought I wanted most in life to show me that he could do immeasurably more than I could hope for, imagine, or want myself. He showed me that by saying yes to what he was compelling me towards was a million times better of a life than my dream job of traveling and getting paid. So after a month, I left Kazakhstan. I returned to the States for Christmas. I packed my stuff, and moved to Kazakhstan a month later. Slowly but surely, God has shown me what he wanted from my life, and he built my life there. Mind you, when I moved to Kazakhstan, I had a 30-day tourist visa. I had 30 days to find a job that would give me a visa. Before I went, I had no job, no apartment, nothing there. I was saying yes to Kazakhstan, but that's about all I knew. Remember when I read Acts 20:22, and now, compelled by the Spirit, I'm going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I'm going to Kazakhstan, not knowing what will happen to me there. So Kazakhstan for me is heaven on earth, despite the minus 40-degree winter. Yes, minus 40-degree winter. There's no place on earth that I'd rather be. But many Kazakhs, especially those my age and younger, have a different opinion. They think, but why would you leave America to come to Kazakhstan? Even my father, not being a lover of cold himself, once said to me, Sian, only gods can make someone leave sunny California for Kazakhstan. But that's exactly right, isn't it? Without God compelling me there, would I have ever gone? Probably not. Without the hand of God, under normal daily circumstances, a lot of things that happen wouldn't happen. My great-grandparents, when they heard that my grandparents were moving to Africa in the 1960s with their 2 daughters, probably thought that my grandparents were out of their minds. I have a meme here that should be shown on the stage, but if you've ever seen The Office, right now in my mind I have this, right? Stanley talking to Ryan saying, have you lost your minds? And that's exactly how I view my great-grandparents responding to my grandparents. It's inconceivable and unfathomable why Christians would do the things they do to other people. Many Kazakhs can't imagine volunteering. Spend my time helping people? They should pay for that. Spend my time doing things in the city? That is the government's job. Do things to help people without asking anything in return? You've got the upper hand here. You're losing out on so much. Jonah going to a sin-rotten city. Insane? No. Called. Abraham picking up and leaving without knowing where to? Crazy? No, he's driven. Paul continuing on his missionary journey despite having his life endangered, despite being thrown in prison. Was he out of his mind? No, he was driven, he was compelled. Compelled by the love of Christ, compelled because he knew that Christ's love was so real, so good, it had to be shared. He couldn't gatekeep it. He knew how much it could save people, how much it would heal people, how much light it would give people. So he was compelled and he continued. You know, a few years actually into my life in Kazakhstan, I went to visit Armenia with my parents. And one Sunday we were in church. Before the service, the pastor there came up to talk to us. And I said, yeah, I live in Kazakhstan. My parents are coming from the States. And he said, oh, before service, would you like to tell a little bit about what it's like to be a missionary in Kazakhstan? I was confused. I said, oh, no thanks, I'm not a missionary. He said, oh, okay, and he left, and my mom kind of gave me this look like, what are you talking about? Maybe frustrated, maybe confused, but I was confused too. This took me back. I'm a missionary? I still had the view of William Carey and Adoniram Judson in my head. I had serious imposter syndrome. After 7.5 years in Kazakhstan, I can say that the definition of missionary isn't a fundraiser who can never contact home, packs their belongings into a coffin, has all their family die, and is miserable in life but joyful in their call to evangelize the world. No. Do you know what the Oxford definition is of missionary? A person sent on a religious mission, especially one sent to promote Christianity in a foreign country. That's it. The types of missionaries are vast and endless. It is multifaceted. Paul was a tent maker, and you know what a tent maker is, right? To be honest with you, it wasn't until about 8 years ago that I knew a tent maker isn't necessarily a missionary who makes tents. Okay? I seriously thought that a tent maker makes literal tents. Learning about tent makers as a kid, I really racked my brain thinking, how are missionaries in this day and age and economy making a living and financially supporting themselves, making and selling tents? So I'm sure you guys know, most of you by now, that a tent maker refers to a missionary who supports themselves financially, working a regular job, instead of being supported by churches or people back in their home country or around the world. So I'm also going to say this because, hey, I didn't even know what a tent maker was till like 8 years ago. But being a missionary doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to preach in a church ever. My grandfather did that. My father did that. The father of the family who I interned with in Thailand did that, Tom Morse. I thought all missionaries had to preach. Being a missionary is not about preaching in a church, and it's not about making tents. It's about saying yes to the compelling and allowing God to use you in each next step, to each next moment that you say yes to Him in.